Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today, the grayscale trusts are pulling back on the rising treasury yields and the DXY. So looks like we might have some buying opportunities. With that being said, let's get it. All right. So first thing I want to bring up here is channel memberships. So for those of you guys that have channel memberships, what we're going to do until YouTube comes up with some kind of solution for this, again, we're going to reach out to them and ask them if they can come up with something. For those of you guys that have channel memberships, we're going to give you the first 2 to 3 hours to access the content immediately after we post it. If you have not accessed it by then, we're going to switch it over to Premiere so that way everybody across the board is getting what they want. Again, we are giving you guys some time to go ahead and get access to the content when it gets posted. So anyways, let's get into the content here. So as you guys can see on the Fidelity account, we still kind of are sitting here. There was somebody that said that they thought that we sold out of mana. I mean, we could, $830 profit is, money's money, it's 41% gain. Basically pull this out, have an extra 3K to mess around with. But like we told y'all before, we suspect that likely this thing is going to break the previous all-time high and probably enter price discovery at some point. Don't know exactly when, but the market got pretty heavily smashed today. I mean, we were trading futures this morning, and the downside was no joke. I can tell you all that right now. But you can see that mana barely moved. Okay, so ETCG had this whopper smash to the downside, so 10%, but ETCG only down 0.3%. So something to point out there. So that's the portfolio. Now let's go over the actual trusts. So you can see the MACD is still turning red on the histogram. We have the death cross, still kind of trending along over bot territory on the RSI. So not really any indicative moves yet. As of right now, we're still kind of testing this trend line from resistance turn support. Now we also have the support zone down here, and the EMA is all kind of converging. That should hold pretty strong as support, I would assume. So as of right now, I would say roughly about $27 is going to be the support. So pretty much the top of the zone where the trend line and the zone line up. If it kind of bleeds down along the trend line, then support could be all the way down at 24.35. But we've talked about this for eons. So the target area that you're looking for is roughly around $55. Once again, that's kind of at the top of this candle. That's known as a control bar. So the control bar lines up perfectly with that wick high up there. It's going to be about $55 somewhere in there. And then the next stop would be roughly about 75-ish. And then above that, 100 to 135. Just show you guys the all-time high is all the way up here at $510. So there is some serious upside potential here. We could also be forming a potential kind of cup and handle pattern here. This might be the handle playing out right now. I'm not going to give you guys a measurement on that until we actually get a confirmation. So because that would be a pretty massive target. I think it would actually be bigger than the previous all-time high. But anyways, let's go ahead and do the measurements here. So from the current price to the swing high up here, 88% move. From the current price, let's say, to $75, which is pretty much the next target, 156%, and then up to these levels up here, 244 and a 370. Now, if you wanted to buy on the pullback and get in right around the absolute perfect entry as of right now, and again, it may not be the perfect entry. This thing could sell down below all these support zones. Keep that in mind. That's a risk. But if this was a bounce point, this would ideally be the perfect entry. So from that area to the swing high, about 108%, $75 level, 187%, and then you'd be looking at roughly about 272% to about 412%. So pretty good moves there. Oh, right. One more thing. So let's go down to the daily. I forgot about this because we do want to look at this. So daily still holding up nicely, kind of stuck in between the support and the trend lines. That's indicative of kind of sideways chop and or potential accumulation. You can see that we have what looks to be like another death cross here. But again, if this death cross is truly going to play out in the price would come down below this trend line and below the support and kind of head towards this trend line. Not seeing that quite yet. So as of right now, I would say it's neutral at worst, potentially maybe bullish in the short term, in the future at best. So BCHG, this is kind of weird, but this thing's just kind of chopping sideways. You can see like the range here is roughly about $13.50 to $11 or so. So we do have a MACD death cross. There is that. Again, on the weekly time frame, I'd say the yellow EMA at the bottom of the support is going to be roughly about the support. If it gets below that, that's below 1020, I should say, roughly about where this trend line is going to be as support, so 860. The candle here is not below these candles yet. And I'm not saying they're going to be, but because we're not seeing that yet, I would say that this is kind of neutral. It's not really bearish yet per se. So from the current price of the swing high up here, it's going to be about 105% move. If it gets down to these candle bodies down here, which is a little bit lower, maybe roughly about 115%. Now, if it pulls back all the way to this trend line at 860, you'd be looking at about 180%. Again, the support above us is going to be $18 to $20, but really we'd be looking for a target all the way up here at this wick high, because again, that is the swing high. That's kind of a really major level when it comes to trading. So break of the trend line, still sitting above support, although again, like LTCN, we're kind of stuck in between the EMAs and the bottom of the support zone. So I would say this thing is just going to chop sideways for a while. Whether it breaks down or breaks out, that remains to be seen. If it breaks down, we are looking for a move below support and below the trend line. If it breaks out, a move above support and above the EMAs. Got the MACD death cross here, but again, that doesn't mean anything unless the price reflects it, which we have not seen yet. So HZEN, histogram's turning less bearish. That's always a good sign. You guys can see it's kind of pushing up into this resistance here. That's also a good sign for those of you that got in back here before the breakout or even at the breakout. So it's above the EMAs. That's very good, but we're still stuck in between the EMAs and the range. So ideally, we want to see a break of the range and kind of head for the swing high here. So if there's a pullback, could pull back anywhere between this blue EMA to the trend line. I'd be looking for the trend line if it was me. So 425 is going to be the trend line. Again, that is not financial advice, but from that trend line to the swing high up here, we'd be looking at 143% move compared to the current price to the swing high, about 61%. So still pretty good, but not as good. But again, we could get rejected off of this box here and then just boom, straight back down to the trend line. That could happen. So this resistance is still $7 to about $8. I'm going to go down to the daily real quick. You guys can see that we had this MACD death cross, or golden cross, and also on the RSI. Ever since then, we've been moving up. And we do now have a golden cross on the EMAs. So that's very bullish. And you can kind of see we're creating these higher lows and higher highs here on the daily. So that's also a very good sign. ETCG, pull back into the trend line. That's not really surprising. So if it pulls all the way back, you'd be looking at roughly about $14. Again, I would say the target's probably going to be right around the top of this zone, so about $20. The approval of the spot ETF, I was kind of expecting this to mirror Bitcoin, what happened with Bitcoin almost exactly. So a massive pump into the approval, a small pullback after the approval, and then once they actually start trading, and they've been trading, like we get the ticker symbols, they've been trading on the exchanges for like maybe a month or something like that. Then we see the next massive leg up on Ethereum and the altcoins. So again, the move would be about 33%. ETH, you can see a very clear breakout here. So this candle, not quite above these ones, but this is a pretty fat green candle. It would not surprise me if this thing at some point just absolutely smashed this previous swing high here. So MACD, golden cross, RSI, golden cross. That's very good. So we have a cup and handle. It's kind of ugly. This thing is kind of ugly. So the cup and handle is not really all that great looking, but we'll go ahead and measure it anyways. So if this actually does turn out to be a cup and handle, the move here would be absolutely ridiculous. So you guys can see $150 per share. And again, I want to reiterate that's possible. Okay. So when the Bitcoin spot ETFs got approved, or even before they got approved, really, I mean, Bitcoin literally doubled in price. So Ethereum could double in price, which means the ETH would be roughly around $7,000. That would not surprise me. And this would reflect in the price of ETH. So as of right now, from the current price to, let's say this, I don't know what this target is up here that I have here, but we'll say to the top of this resistance, about 38%. Now, if we get a pullback into support and we get up to this resistance, it's about 88%. And if we get all the way to this cup and handle target, 472%, again, that is possible. And the support currently sits at roughly around $25. So Phil G, again, these are the potential scenarios, higher highs or higher lows. We don't yet know because, again, it needs to break above here to be considered a trend shift, or down below here to be considered continuation to the downside. We don't yet know. But as of right now, it looks very bullish. We have a candle above the EMAs. The EMAs are starting to slope up. The bearish histogram is starting to shift more bullish. So that's very good. If we get a pullback on this thing, probably going to go back down to this trend line, so about $23. So from the current price to the swing high, 180%. From the current price down to the trend line, you can see the absolutely disgusting drop there of 84%. That is possible. And from that trend line to the high up here, about 1,600% move. So, I mean, just absolutely insane move. You'd be looking at like a 15x on your money. It's crazy. So GBAT still looking very bullish. We're still above the trend line, still above the EMA, still above the support zone. So everything here looks good. From the current price to the swing high, we'd be looking at 90-ish%. Could get a pullback into the support zone. That's absolutely possible. That would be about a 55% drop. That would line up perfectly with that trend line too. So from support to the swing high, 307% move. GLIV, this is a shooting star candle. Ideally, this does not close like this. If it does, that's pretty bearish, I would say. Potentially a pullback into the EMAs, maybe even to the trend line support. Again, that's all the way down at $15, but I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just throwing this out there for you guys so you know that's a possibility. 440% move all the way up to $81. And as of right now, to the swing high up here, 102% move. G-Link, this thing still looks very bullish. So we do have a higher candle here than this previous one when we broke out. So that's very bullish. Do keep in mind this thing can pull back into the trend line still and then bounce. That would be completely normal. To be completely honest, I would even kind of expect it. So 67% move from current price to the highs. If we get a pullback, let's say maybe next week. Sorry about that. Let me try this one more time. So from, let's say, next week into the high up here, about 151% move. And again, the trend line currently sits at about $90 or so. So GSOL, the MACD is starting to slowly turn more bullish, you can see. But what kind of worries me about this is that the EMAs are way up here, way above the break-even level. So that's kind of a little bit worrisome. But not that big of a deal. Again, it still looks very bullish. I mean, price broke out of this descending trend line here, so that's a very good thing with a massive green candle. So current price to highs, you'd be looking at about 25% move. Let's say it gets a pullback maybe into somewhere around the convergence of these trend lines. To the high, about 52% move. And I just want to throw this out there just so you guys know this absolutely can happen. If it gets all the way back down to support here, which is a possibility, it could go down 63%. Just so you guys understand both the reward and the risk. Okay, so we're getting a retest on GXLM of this trend line, as you guys can see here. If I was going to get into this, I would get into it now, which I'm not. But if I was, I would at least start doing it right now. because this is a potential perfect bounce opportunity for this thing to go higher. So the trend line currently sits at 43. If I was going to target this, I'd either look for the swing high, so about $69 or 60% move. We're all the way up at this resistance up here at 96-ish for about 123% move. Again, that's just the way I would do it. You guys can do what you want. So mana, slight pullback, although the MACD is turning less bearish, so that's good. We had this really big green breakout candle above the trend line, also above the EMAs, kind of at the apex of the trend line and the support here. So there's two potential scenarios here. Either we just rip straight up to all-time highs, or at least to the previous high, that'd be 133% move, or we pull back into support, which is possible. Again, the EMAs are kind of sitting around that area too, and then bounce, and that would be about a 244% move. Again, the support zone is roughly around where roughly about our cost basis, about 21%. So Zcash price is slowly starting to curl up. Again, when it moves sideways, that's accumulation. When it curls up like this, that's a very bullish sign. Of course, we got to break the trend line. There's also that. It could either go straight up into resistance or it could pull back. Those are both, I would say, equal scenarios at this point. So 65% move from here to the swing high. And if it does pull back, which it could, it would pull back roughly about the convergence of the trend line and the support zone. So roughly about $4.50 or so is what you'd be looking at. From that area to the swing high, we'd be looking at 132% move. All right, so anyways, this is the Grayscale Trust for the day. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.